Good evening. I'm Joe Giannakis, Director of Debate and an instructor of speech communication at Lee College in Baytown, Texas. We'd like to welcome you to the 2020 Candidate Forum for the Harris County District Attorney election. Invitations were extended to both the Democratic incumbent and her Republican challenger for tonight's public forum to help inform Harris County voters about their upcoming choices in the 2020 election. We're joined this evening by Mary Nan Huffman, Republican candidate for District Attorney. Kim Ogg's campaign declined to attend tonight's event. As part of Lee College's commitment to our service area, we are providing a platform via YouTube Live where you can submit questions for candidate Huffman via email at candidateforum@lee.edu. Again, that's candidateforum@lee.edu. Before we begin, it's important to note that all participants for tonight's event wore appropriate personal protective equipment as they entered Rundell Hall here on the Lee College campus in Baytown. And we're exceeding traditional social distancing parameters established by the Center for Disease Control while the forum is being broadcast. We will provide candidate Huffman with the opportunity to lead tonight's event with some opening remarks. Then we'll take a series of big picture questions to help answer some of the most pressing issues for Harris County voters during this election cycle. Following this, we'll pose a series of questions that are curated from public comments submitted via the email address I mentioned previously, and then we'll allow some closing comments from Ms. Huffman. We appreciate you tuning in tonight. We believe that this is an important election, but then again, all important elections should be important elections. We hope that tonight's candidate forum helps you make the most informed choices possible as you prepare to cast your votes in the 2020 elections. And without further ado, candidate Huffman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Mary Nan Huffman, and I'm running for Harris County District Attorney because public safety should be the one thing the government provides for its people. But over the last 4 years, Kim Ogg has done nothing to keep the people of Harris County safe. I was a prosecutor for almost 10 years. When I left the DA's office, I was the chief of child exploitation, internet crimes against children, child trafficking was my specialty. Currently, I'm an attorney for the Houston Police Officers Union, and I go out on a lot of scenes. And what I've seen is a significant increase in violent repeat offenders committing crimes. I'm a mom, I have 2 young boys, and I want them to grow up in a safe place. But right now in Harris County, our families, our communities, and our businesses are in danger. I had one business owner tell me last week that he owns stores in 11 states across the nation, with only 10% of his stores being in Harris County. He said he's had more armed robberies at his Harris County locations in the last 2 years than all other stores combined. That's a shocking number. And as long as we continue to allow criminal activity to be here, as long as criminals don't face any consequences and they don't have any accountability, people are going to continue to commit crimes. And right now, Harris County it's a safe haven for bad guys. As your next district attorney, I want to hold violent repeat offenders accountable. I want to support the efforts of good law enforcement, and I want to be a voice for crime victims. And I know that when we do that, when we work together, Harris County can be the safest, greatest place to live. But right now, under the Ogg administration, we've seen a backlog in cases, and justice delayed is justice denied. When Kim Ogg took office 4 years ago, there were about 988 pending murders and capital murder cases in all the felony courts. Since then, there's been a 31% increase. In 2020 now, we're looking at over 1,300 murders and capital murders. And I've been all around the county during this campaign, and the stories remain the same. You have law enforcement officers working hard to protect victims of crime, only to then have the case turned in at the DA's office and it fall apart right there. Kim Ogg has left her own trail of victims in the process. Well, we're going to fix that. I'm going to bring experience back to the office, an office that's been mismanaged now for 4 years, and I'm asking for your vote for Harris County District Attorney.
Thank you. We'll leave in some questions, and these are simply big picture questions that really suit what a forum should be. This is obviously a non-adversarial situation, but one that's meant to give some insight into the biggest and maybe even the most pressing issues that we're going to face, not just in the next few months, but in the next few years. According to the Houston Chronicle, there's been a significant uptick in reported crimes in Harris County during 2020 compared to 2019, with homicides up by nearly 40% and burglaries up by nearly 20%. If elected, what steps would your office take to address this increase in reported crimes?
First, we have to start holding criminals accountable. As long as criminals feel safe to commit crimes here, they're going to keep committing crimes here. When I was a prosecutor in Montgomery County, one of the last cases I worked on, there was a mom who was going to put her 2-year-old daughter on a Greyhound bus from Houston to Conroe and sell the 2-year-old for about $1,200 for 2 hours with this man. Well, thankfully, the man ended up being one of the undercover officers that I was working with. And so we set up surveillance at the downtown Greyhound station in Houston. We set up surveillance in Conroe. But before that mother put that little girl on the bus, she sent a text message to the undercover officer and said, "Hey, you think we should just stay in Harris County? Because that DA up there, he doesn't like people like us." You know, and for me, that was an eye-opening moment because this wasn't the crime that bothered her, it was the jurisdiction. You know, she knew that if she committed that crime in Harris County and got caught, she wasn't going to be in any trouble. So we're not giving criminals enough credit. I went back to the office and I was talking to some of the other ADAs up there, and they said, well, it's not just these kind of crimes. I had somebody the other day say, look, I'll come sell you black tar heroin, but I ain't crossing that county line. You know, criminals know where they are safe. And as long as they feel safe here, crime in Harris County is going to rise.
With Houston being the 4th largest city in the United States, the challenges we face in the pandemic and in the days after are unique. Not just because we're always seeming in the crosshairs of hurricanes, but because we face a challenging economy and other myriad issues. How do you see the Office of the Harris County District Attorney adapting in the post-COVID era?
The District Attorney's Office has needed to adapt for a long time now. I think there's always been that mentality of if it's working, we don't have to fix it, until something like this comes, a pandemic where we're forced to adjust. Being the chief of internet crimes against children and having that experience with technology, I was trained by the Secret Service at their forensics laboratory. You know, we need to move the DA's office into the 21st century. We need to be able to work remotely wherever we need to be and get business done. Right now, because of COVID, cases are taking longer to work out. We see the backlog continuing to grow. Now, the backlog didn't start just because of COVID. It had been happening since 2017. But we really need to learn how to use technology, learn how to utilize all the resources available, because justice can move a little bit faster than it's moving right now.
Now, you mentioned working within the Montgomery County office. Will there be a necessary transition period for you to assume the duties on a county much larger in size with a much larger geographic region, to put it mildly?
With any change of administration, of course, there is going to be a transition period. And what Kim Ogg has done over the last 3.5 years is going to take time to fix. And frankly, it's going to take a long time to fix. I would love to say that I could go in there and fix everything in the first 100 days that I'm the new DA, but it's going to take longer than that. We need to bring experience back to the office. You know, when Kim Ogg took office, she fired 658 years of experience. And these were chief prosecutors that were frankly training prosecutors all over the state of Texas how to do their jobs. Now, since she was elected, 42% of all lawyers are gone. And so, and she's never been able to keep a full staff since. So we need to bring experience back to the office. We need to get the staff back operating at 100%, and that'll help move the transition along.
So you mentioned the term 100, the first 100 days, which has achieved nearly mythical status with it for any politically informed person in the United States. The idea that within the first 3 months of holding office, you have an obligation to your constituents and really to the nation as a whole, to the state as a whole, to the county as a whole, to put us on the path to something tangible. If elected, what do you see your first 100-day priorities as being if you're elected as Harris County District Attorney?
Absolutely bringing that experience back. Getting attorneys in there that are capable of making decisions, that have had experience, whether they were a prosecutor in the past or a defense attorney in the past. Getting some training for the prosecutors. The prosecutors right now, they lack mentorship. No one becomes a prosecutor or a police officer for that matter because they want to do a bad job. They do it because they love it, and it's something that they feel passionate about. So, but they need training, just like we do in all of our careers. We have so much continuing education and re-education throughout the job. So getting that experience back. Once we have that experience, then it's about looking at the resources the county has and what are the needs. You know, our homicides have gone up by 40%, but Kim Ogg hires more environmental prosecutors. And I'm not saying that environmental crimes are not a worthy crime, but is that really where our problem is right now in Harris County? You know, our violent crimes with guns have gone up 44% from last year. Our domestic violence cases are up by 37% from last year. We need to reallocate our resources and work smarter, not harder. I think it's also important when you talk to your employees and when you hire people to find out what they are passionate about. You know, my specialty was child exploitation, internet crimes against children, and that was my passion. And I think that when you have people that are passionate about certain things and you put them in position, put in the extra hours, and so finding out what the employees are actually passionate about and then reassigning them.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned fixing things, and I think that's a theme that many Americans are using as their mantra as we go into this electoral cycle. Criminal justice reform is a major issue at the local, state, and even federal level in this current election and really for the past few years. The proposals range from increased emphasis on pretrial diversion programs to increased implementation of drug courts, perhaps no longer prosecuting arrests for nominal amounts of recreational narcotics, or even moving away from cash bail for misdemeanor offenses. Is criminal justice reform necessary for Harris County? And if so, what's your vision for it?
Criminal justice reform did need to happen in Harris County. And of course, we don't want to keep people in jail just because they're poor. That was not the purpose of having a bail type system. You know, the purpose of bail was to protect the public. It's a balance. You want to protect the public while balancing someone's individual liberty. That being said, I 100% believe in second chances. I like these diversion programs. I like these second chance programs because we're all human beings and we all make mistakes. But what we're seeing right now in Harris County are repeat violent offenders getting 16th, 17th, 18th chances, and innocent people are getting hurt.
Issues like recidivism, obviously, are a topic that Lee College knows well. We have a wonderful prison education program, and it's something that many people, everything from social work to our political science programs to even our communications programs, have helped students investigate. Some of the concerns that go along with this idea that we see so many repeat offenders is also the means by which they are let out of incarceration. Bail reform is also a hot topic in 2020. District Attorney Ogg has been a public proponent of reform in and of itself, at least in the abstract sensibility, but she's also publicly noted that personal recognizant bonds are a choice for judges to make and not for prosecutors to make. Where do you stand on the issue of personal recognizance bonds, and how would you see them changed in Harris County?
You know, justice is not a one-size-fits-all problem. Justice is individualized. We know that not every crime is the same and not every criminal is the same, and you have to look at the risk factors when making an assessment about how dangerous this person is. How concerned are we about them coming back to court? Are they going to flee the country if they are released on bail? You know, Kim Ogg likes to blame the judges for this PR bond situation, but on May 16th, Rosalie Cook, she's 80 years old, 5 feet tall, she's coming out of Walgreens at 10 a.m. It is broad daylight, and she's stabbed to death by a total stranger. Now, the man that did that, his name was Randy Lewis, and before he met Rosalie on that day, he'd already been arrested 67 times. 67 times. That's an incredible amount. Before he met Rosalie on that day, the last crime he'd been arrested for was for assaulting a police officer. Now, the DA's office, they had Randy Lewis. They looked at his criminal history. They knew he was bad. They knew he was dangerous. And Kim Ogg agreed to release him on $0. So if we're talking about the PR bonds being a judge issue, sometimes it is. But in the case of Randy Lewis, the district attorney's office agreed to release him. And not 2 weeks later, Rosalie and her family, they were the victims. You know, I think at some point we need to start protecting law abiders and we need to start punishing lawbreakers. You know, why is his life more important than hers? And it is a balance, and it is something that should be very thoughtful. And I wish in a case like Randy Lewis, we could say, gosh, man, we just never saw that coming. That was out of nowhere. But we kind of did. You know, we knew his criminal history. We knew he'd been arrested 67 times. We knew they were for violent offenses. So we did know that this was a possibility, and unfortunately it happened.
Now, on the same note, in terms of what we've seen recently in the media, the Houston Chronicle's editorial staff has repeatedly supported District Attorney Ogg's protocols from her office to refuse prosecution for misdemeanor marijuana possession cases. What's your position on this policy?
Harris County is like a flooded house. And when your house floods, you don't go in and start touching up the paint, right? You go in and you rip off the sheetrock and you remediate and you take care of the big problems. Marijuana is not our problem in Harris County. Our problems are the repeat violent offenders, the human trafficking cases, the gangs, and that's where we need to put our focus.
Now, in terms of focus, something that's been gripping the nation with stories in the media sometimes being perhaps sensationalized and also in other situations perhaps being underplayed is the issue of asset forfeiture. District Attorney Ogg has advocated for using asset forfeiture as a means of compensating victims of crime in Harris County. Yet critics claim that this violates fundamental civil rights and opens the door to abuse by elected officials, with the use of these funds not being observed directly by voters. What is your position? What's the position of your campaign on the issue of asset forfeiture?
I think, like with any position in government, there was always room for abuse. There are things in place for people to use. You know, you have a bad guy money laundering, and so that money should be seized. Why should that person get to benefit from the criminal activity? And maybe that money could be used to do other things for the county or to help the other law enforcement agencies. But with great power comes great responsibility. And it needs to be very thoughtful. So do things need to be seized every single time? Absolutely not. But are there cases where it's appropriate? Yes.
Fair enough. Now, speaking by inner nerd with the Peter Parker reference from Spider-Man, the idea of responsibility is one that I think has been an ongoing theme for the past several years, and how our elected officials bear the fruit of the voters' choices at the ballot box. 2020, I think it's fair to say, has also been this year of movements and social change, or at least the calls for social change, including Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, and many others. How does your campaign see these movements impacting the Harris County judicial system over the next few years?
Unfortunately, racism and discrimination, it still exists. And it would be very naive to say that, you know, it doesn't happen anymore, because we know that it does. But I think that you need to be aware of that discrimination, of the injustices. Train your prosecutors to look at facts and evidence, not based on the color of someone's skin or their gender preference or their religion that they practice. You know, that has nothing to do with the facts of a criminal investigation. And if you look at the facts of the case, look at all the surrounding circumstances, that's what the decision of justice should be made on.
Now, another hot button topic, and one that, quite frankly, creates a bit of maybe the discord that we see in the American electorate, is the term defund the police. And it started a national conversation about how tax dollars are allocated for law enforcement, for crime prevention, for community education, and even municipal mental health services. Where would your office stand on the potential reallocation of resources typically budgeted for county law enforcement?
I don't think that defunding the police is the answer. I think that we need to continue supporting law enforcement, and that comes in terms of training. Let's put that money towards better training for our officers. Let's put that money into creating this type of vertical prosecution where prosecutors work hand in hand with the officers. They're out on scene. We did that a lot when I was a prosecutor. I would go out with the police officers on scene. I would be there when the search warrant was conducted. You know, I think a lot of times police officers are thinking, okay, probable cause. What is happening right now in the moment to make the arrest? But when prosecutors get involved, and not that prosecutors and law enforcement, we're not on the same team, but we are allies, and we do have to work together to make this system work. You know, when I'm out on the scene as a lawyer, I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking about evidence at trial. I'm thinking about what I have to prove, not just getting through the hurdle of probable cause, but proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And out there on scene, the prosecutors could help advise law enforcement about what they needed or what would make a better case in the courtroom. And when we did that, what we saw was cases pleading out faster. Yet the first court date, we had all the evidence that we needed. Here. This is why this person is guilty, and this is why this sentence may be appropriate. And maybe the appropriate sentence is probation, but maybe the appropriate sentence is prison. But I think we have to work together to make this system the best it can be.
So the idea of essentially letting the punishment fit the crime is something that probably is in the DNA of most native Texans. But there has been the idea that when the victims of crimes don't have their cries heard, it dissolves the necessary bonds of justice that make our society such a great place. For years across the country, backlogs of rape kits, crimes that quite frankly take years to go to trial and so on, beset really the candidates running, because it calls into question, can we have faith in elected leaders? If we know, based on your assertions, that we are seeing slowdowns due to a slimming of the district attorney's office and so on, can this challenge be overcome in a single term?
Absolutely, but we need to make sure the victims have the resources that they need while this process is going on. You know, victims are the only ones that don't choose to be a part of this system. As a prosecutor, I chose that as my profession. Law enforcement, they choose to be police. The judge chooses to run for office. Even the bad guy chooses when to commit the crime. But the victim has no choice to be part of this system, and we need to be mindful that crime victims have rights just like the accused have rights.
Knowing the history of Baytown police brutality, and more specifically the case of Pamela Turner and the indictment of Officer De La Cruz, what would you have done in that case, and what would you do if elected to hold police officers more accountable?
I haven't seen the evidence in that case, but I would do my job. And if I looked at the evidence and my job showed that there was probable cause that an officer committed a crime, I would prosecute that officer. You know, if you take advantage of a Harris County resident, I don't care if you are wearing a badge or sitting on commissioner's court. You need to be held accountable just like everybody else.
Can the Harris County District Attorney be more visible amongst the average person? Too often, I think the office is seen as the end of a road that should not be traveled upon. But quite frankly, being a proactive force in the community can really probably fall on the shoulders of any elected official. How would you make a proactive difference in our community?
We need community liaisons within the DA's office. I know the complaint from Baytown sometimes is, you know, the elected officials only come out here once every 4 years or any time that there's a campaign. And they feel neglected because they're not the city of Houston that gets all the attention. Even looking at entities like the Baytown Police, well, their agency is so much smaller than HPD that has 5,300 officers as part of their union. It is important to keep our smaller communities engaged and listen to their needs and react appropriately, because when you don't pay attention, I think citizens, constituents, they become upset. Their needs go unattended to, and that's when we have bigger problems. So we need to start a line of communication from the very beginning and continue it throughout the 4 years, not just at the beginning of 4 years and at the time re-election comes up.
Now, too often these forums and debates and so on focus on the negative things. Unfortunately, there is one question that is the proverbial 800-pound gorilla in the room, and that's the challenges facing Harris County. In your appraisal, in terms of what motivated you to run for this office, what are the top 3 challenges facing Harris County in the next cycle?
I mean, the main challenge is public safety. You know, I am a mom. I want my kids to grow up in a safe place. And I told my husband, I don't know if this is the right time to do this, but if we don't do something now, we're not gonna wanna live here anymore. I've lived in Harris County now for 12 years. I've had 2 different houses broken into 3 different times. And every time something bad happens, I'm like, honey, we're moving to the country. And we shouldn't have to feel like that. We all deserve to feel safe in our homes. You know, Harris County, the district attorney's office, it shouldn't be a political position. It shouldn't be a partisan position. You shouldn't have to run as a Republican or as a Democrat, because public safety isn't partisan. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, we all want to live in a safe place. And that's the goal. You know, and each time our house was broken into, not once did they ask me who I voted for before I was robbed, right? And we all deserve to be safe.
Now, how will you personally prioritize areas of Harris County in dire need of attention and reform?
We need to look at the community as a whole, look at the entire county with those community liaisons and see what the complaints are, what the concerns of the citizens are, and then prioritize that way.
Unfortunately, District Attorney Ogg chose not to be here this evening. In your estimation, what are the 3 things that set you apart from your opponent?
Kim Ogg has been a terrible leader throughout these 4 years. And I think that we see that, her mismanagement of the office, through the turnover and the fact that she's never been able to keep a full staff. If you looked at some of these resignation letters that have come through lately, even in the media, one said, you know, I've been a prosecutor for 15 years, and I would have continued to do this job because that's what I love to do. But the things that Kim Ogg is asking me to do are so unethical that my bar license is in jeopardy. I had a prosecutor say that to me that left the office. That's terrible, right? Because this should be about justice. You know, Kim Ogg, she picks and chooses what cases to prosecute based on what she thinks benefits her politically or what gives her press and PR. But that's not what this office is about. I promise never to misuse my authority to prosecute cases based on what I think the public wants. You know, she thinks that, you know, the public wants her to do all these things, but the public, they just want a DA that keeps them safe. That's all the public wants. And so those are the big differences between us. The other difference is that I will make public safety a priority. She hasn't done that. Over the last 4 years, we have seen Kim Ogg put votes over victims, put her politics over the people, and innocent people are getting hurt.
Now, seeing a vision for your campaign is really seeing the vision for what Harris County can or should become. So quite frankly, what should the identity of Harris County in terms of justice be?
The great thing about Harris County is that we live in one of the most diverse counties in America. And so our county, our DA's office should reflect that. And it's not like going to some little DA's office up in the panhandle of Texas and trying to convince good candidates to come and work there. We have the ability to have the best, to have diversity with the best trained lawyers. My vision would be to get the office back and operating at 100%, to have these community liaisons in place, to do community prosecution, to rebuild that relationship with law enforcement so that way we can make sure that justice is done every step of the way.
With that, we come to the close of questions submitted by the community and obviously by the staff here at Lee College. We do want to give you time for some closing statements because obviously this is one of the chances that you have to reach out directly to voters, hopefully undecided voters, since we've seen record turnout for early voting in Harris County. With that, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm an experienced prosecutor that will put public safety at the top of my priority. I will work hard to make sure that our communities, our businesses, and our families are safe. That Harris County is a place that we want to be able to raise our kids, that we don't have to think about where we're going to go next because crime has gotten so bad. You know, Harris County, the city of Houston, it was known for the crime, and so people kind of moved to the suburbs of the county. And I am countywide. I'm 4.7 million people. So I'm everywhere from Katy to Tomball, Cypress, Huffman, the Highlands, Baytown, Pasadena, parts of Clear Lake. I mean, it is a giant county. So we see the crime going into those suburb areas, and crime is getting worse. Our gangs are getting worse. I'm going to make Harris County the safest, greatest place to live, and I'm asking for your vote for Harris County District Attorney.
Thank you, candidate Huffman. We'd like to thank candidate Huffman for appearing tonight and hopefully informing the voters about what your choices mean, not just for the next few days, not just for the next few weeks, but really for the next few years. We're proud to host as many events that benefit our community as possible. On behalf of the Speech Communication Program, on behalf of the Marketing and Public Affairs Division, on behalf of our President, Dr. Linda Villanueva, and on behalf of our Lee College Board of Regents, we'd like to extend our thanks to all those of you who've tuned in tonight. As a reminder, Lee College offers more than 100 certificate and degree programs as well as non-credit community education courses. If you're interested in attending Lee College in the future, spring registration begins on October 27th. Please visit lee.edu for more information. With that, we thank you, we thank candidate Huffman, and we encourage everyone to make sure you get out and vote.